Welcome to Your Inner Authority, the sacred art of living in your authentic truths. My name is Priscilla Bernstein, and I am the Soul Alignment Specialist, and I'm talking with Allison Rojas Metcalf of Salute Shop. In this podcast, we're here to share all we've learned about what it means to live your life from your authentic codes and how to navigate life within your inner authority. We're sharing what we know from our years of exploration of human design, gene keys, quantum physics, spirituality, yoga, and more. As you listen to these episodes, it is our intention that they help to support you on your journey of aligning to your sovereignty and soul truths. Welcome, and let's get started. Okay. Even if we don't use all of this, I feel like we're getting into some nuggets here, and I don't want to miss any of that. But yes, and how old are you now? What?
41.
41. Okay. Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I know. I feel like my birthday, I feel like I always have to be the one to initiate the celebrations. And I'm like, just once, I really want somebody to just surprise me.
Yeah, there's definitely something around when we make the effort. I think it's a strong through line with my own son and our relationship of if you make the effort and then you show up in some way, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're all seeking in each other and ourselves. It's not this go and do your best, because sometimes that's not available on that day or that moment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole dialogue left out of meeting the moment of meet the moment as you are in that time. And yeah, I think that was what was happening there. I wanted it to be different. I wanted other people to meet me in a different way. And when it wasn't happening, it was hurting me. And that's not how this is supposed to all interact,
Mm-hmm.
The interaction is still lovingly seeing that the others aren't able to meet that moment and still loving them and still going through it and still owning, well, this is, still feeling hurtful or empty. And then the next steps are, okay, do I want to know why? I don't need to sit in this, like we've talked about before. We don't need to relive any of the pain for it to, be released. We don't. The pain is now released. The glass is now broken. The tension is now cut. That's all there was to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
And, I think it really helps us to understand where we hold expectations of ourselves and others, and how when an expectation isn't being met. I teach this in my one-on-one immersion, my 3-month immersions, because what's really happening is when we realize and understand that we do hold expectations on ourselves and others of things being met, of how we would show up for somebody, or how you and your son, you would, how did you put it? You
when
show up in the moment and give your effort, right?
Yeah.
Not do your best, but yeah. And so it's when we expect others to act in the same manner as we would, and then that doesn't get met, how it brings up all the emotions, all the triggers of our, inner child, and any sort of traumas or emotional responses we've had to ever feeling that before, of well, why isn't this person showing up for me? And yeah, we have to stay in that question. We have to, go back to, well, wait, hold on. Let me disassociate from the emotion that I'm feeling here, and feel what I'm feeling, understand what I'm feeling, and then do my best to remove myself from the downward spiral of totally feeling that and being in the, what would you call it? just fully enveloped in the emotion, right? And being more reactive, where when we can like pull ourselves out of that, we can align and to that question and continue. So pulling ourselves, like I posted yesterday, out of the conclusion and bring ourselves back into the question. Well, why am I feeling this way? Like, where did this start? Oh, I can see, like you said, with your family, like, oh, if I look back far enough, like that stuff never did happen, like where have I been like interjecting these ideas around and romanticizing what I wanted to happen, or, what made me feel good. And, maybe it is just us becoming more and more and more conscious and aware that now we can like dissociate and view things from this broader perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your newer emergence around like sexuality and exploration of the self and all that, that's been something that has been very like interesting to watch through you too. Of this, like when you don't have an expectation of what was formed, like from my upbringing and Catholicism and religion. And then yesterday, I was reading part of the book When Women Rise Strong, and there's these like elements of we think this way, we believe this way because the original woman, Eve, in her fullness was wanting knowledge, and to get the knowledge, it was the original sin. So the knowledge within is like untrue. So then it's like this whole like, original wound of what you know to be true or not. And then the truth being spun so that you, in the story of Adam and Eve, you, Eve, are actually born from man. And then going, fast forwarding to modern time, and it being like this whole time, women are literally raised from a religious foundation of you are of man, when really man is of woman, the womb. And so there's like, if we can like keep going back, so little elements like that have come up of like, no wonder it's, not to sound like cliche, but like a gaslighting of sorts of the woman's intuition. What you do know as happening versus what you've witnessed, and how easily you can be convinced that something isn't happening when it is. There's like, no, you're born of man. And you're like, oh, okay, right, because we're born of Adam's rib. No, no, we know that man is born from a woman's womb. It is the woman that is giving birth. It is the woman that is of creation. And that's a beautiful thing. It's not a delineation of one is better than the other, but I think there's a moment of like, let's stop for a minute with all the like noise and the convincing and the distractions. That is a little bit of child psychology influence too, of like when a child falls and it's like, oh, yay, you're fine, instead of like, are you okay? You tell me. I won't intervene and tell you what you're feeling. And then it comes to like, when I was thinking of you and what you're exploring right now is, have we gotten to a point where we're like pacifying these things? Like we have these like percolations or these bubbling up of awareness as children, and then teens and adults. And then every time the thought bubble starts to come up, there's somebody like, no, that's not happening. And you're like, okay, that didn't happen, or that's not happening. And then we get to be adults and we're reflecting on things now of like, am I soothing? Because I never got to realize that thought bubble into an awareness. It never got to become fully expressed. And they will, eventually, at
Right.
41, 50, 60. Um, but I think like that made me then lean into like now as adult women, how can we have awareness between what becomes self-soothing because the body is feeling the nervousness of holding in all of these, awarenesses or intuitions for so long, versus the body exploring sexuality in like a fully expressed, like this is a desired way. And I think we're living in both right now.
I think so too. I think there is a huge dichotomy from as we come out of the patriarchal society, right? And understanding that what we've been taught is not always the right way. I mean, just as you said, when you were talking about, the religious aspect and what the Bible teaches and Adam and Eve, like I was just having so much happen around my heart and just being able to take this breath of like, oh yeah, like that's something that was embedded into our psyche, and literally our DNA has been passed down from generation to generation based on these teachings. And it's not true, like it's not like woman is birthed from, I mean, men are birthed from women, right? And yes, everything that I have been exploring, and I do think that what's happening with, just in reality with Roe versus Wade being overturned, this conversation is so well timed, I think. But interestingly enough, just even me having the foresight or that inspiration to create this course to help women really re-embody not only who they are and all the aspects of themselves, but like to heal these core wounds that not only we've been given and have been passed down to us, but that we've learned over time, through our own personal experiences and through being hurt and through allowing ourselves to, whether it's be gaslit or engage with people that are emotionally immature and, cannot handle having a conversation or whatever it is, whether we've been hurt by a man or whether we've been hurt by a woman or somebody else, like I had created this meditation for some one-on-one immersion people that I have, and it was about being safe with money. And but this goes beyond, like I wrote about on Instagram a couple of days ago about just safety in general and how this whole thing with Roe versus Wade and where we feel safe in our society, and now this core thing that we as women have felt safe with is now taken from us, to have sovereignty over our own body and what it is that we are choosing to do with it. And that, like I'm not against religion. I'm not 100% for it because I feel like it's more divisive than it is inclusive. And so I really stick to spirituality. But that being said, like I am very against religion being engaged with our like systems of government. Like church and state need to be separated. And the fact that that is like intertwining right now, and you're making this about a religious thing, it's like, no, this isn't religion. It's about power and it's about money. And the sad thing is here, and the sad thing and the beautiful thing is, I think we're in this like slingshot right now. Like we're literally being pulled back, and it feels like we're being pulled back into archaic times, right? But it's going to slingshot us forward in order to make a different future and make a different impact in the future for what we're willing to fight for, what we're willing to stand up for, what we are willing to go along with and say yes to, and what we're not. And so I think kind of how we talked about in our last episode, that homogenous ideology around everybody kind of doing the same thing. I feel like more and more we're going to see these new leaders step up in new ways to start to change the paradigm, start to change the narrative, start to change the way that things are done, because it has to change. It can't stay the same. But I do feel like we are in this time where it's like this push pull, and you can really feel that contrast. And I think in the greater scheme of things, you know, when we as women, to go back to this course, when we become more embodied, when we become more aware of our body, because so much of our lives, I think we've learned how to disassociate from our body, going through stress, going through any sort of emotional turmoil or pain. We Our souls will kind of dissociate from our body and kind of be up here. And so I don't know how many clients I work with that are like, I feel like I've never been in my body. Like I've never really been able to like dig down deep. And so going back to this idea of safety and like being safe in our bodies, being safe to use our voice, because for generations we weren't able to use our voice, and if we did, we were shot down for it, or told wrong, we were wrong, or told to be quiet and subdue, you know. And then to go and heal the witch wound as well, like all of us that have lived past lives as healers, or as, you know, a medicine woman or man, you know, and utilizing what the earth has given us and our innate knowledge within us. Because like you said, Eve's like yearning or hunger for knowledge, right? Like that is really what it comes down to. We are nurturing, and we want to know, we want to embody, we want to integrate, we want to feel. We're feelers, right? We take everything and we amplify it. That's what women do. And so when we know that we're safe to do that, and when we heal these wounds around having a past life where we were killed for our knowledge, you know, and even in Adam and Eve, it's like she was persecuted and they were cast out of the garden for her quote unquote original sin of wanting knowledge, of wanting more.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting to observe, because I have, and you know, I've shared with you that there's like different angles that I've kind of like looked at this particular topic, and what I continue to come away with regarding Roe v. Wade is that there's an element of like a desire for the heart coherence. And I think that's what, like, if you do if you span out for bird's eye view and look at, you know, what are we really yearning for collectively? Because there's a pain, and then there's a desire for something. There's a desire for something to be held and embodied within the woman. So if we look at, you know, the approach of what this at the, like, if we're getting political, like at the federal level is them releasing that and saying, you know, we don't want to own that, because that would be, in my perspective, a homogenized approach. And not saying that homogenization is only bad, because in this case it was perceived as good,
Right.
but it was also taking away what's happening right now is these like forming of communities that are in alignment with that individualized approach. So if there's a heart coherence around like the term my body, my choice, then there's like the layers of it, right? Of like, okay, so if it's your body, then are you saying you are the authority of the body within your body, or the, you know, the growing within? And that's like an open-ended contemplation of, you can have resonance with that and be like, actually, yeah, now I'm the keeper, but not the owner of this. So where does that leave me? And then that's that woman's journey and decision, or couples, if together they're like, we're making this decision. And then if there are moments where within those communities, which we'll call like the states this time, they're now forming different value systems. So we're all saying collectively that although we are the United States of America, so if the United States are a family, then the states are still the individuals of that family, which are going to have different personalities, different likes and dislikes. And for the most part, families will, have this genetic disposition to lean a certain way, or to like vote a certain way, or eat a certain way, or celebrate traditions a certain way. But then you're going to have, like what we perceive as the black sheep, who are evolving the family structure. And it looks different than others, and different feels unsafe because it's not familiar. So Jasmine uses the term, we're not afraid, we're unfamiliar. And that's another term that I've adopted with my own son. It's like, maybe we can look at this and feel if we're afraid, or if the feeling is more unfamiliarity. So right now, that's what I kind of sit with as I observe how people are responding or reacting, because some people are responding and some are reacting. And there was one woman, I'm forgetting who it was, who was like, yeah, it's actually in the charts of like 40% of the population right now that this would be activated by this. But it's something about the placement of Scorpio in the chart that will activate this particular body autonomy and decision around Roe v. Wade. So that's why you're seeing this like starkness between like someone like myself who's like observing in a calm way, kind of like feeling it, but observing it. And then also having very close friends who are like feeling it. It's passion, it is raw. Even in my mom, it feels very raw to her. And so what it makes me kind of wonder now is, okay, so this is where there's actually a forming of more heart coherence too, of like, if this is something that you feel in a raw way and you want to then make sure it's not going to happen in your community, this is where it regroups at the state level and city level and becomes even more secure than it would have ever been at the federal level, just by using like politics as a point of reference. Because we do know that that's energetically what's happening within the US with the Pluto return and what we're going through since the inception of the United States of America. There is a coming home of things, of like, are we, now that we've started our own family, are we going to adopt the behaviors of how we were raised, or are we going to form new behaviors as our new group?
Yes.
Tribe group. Yeah. And what are established are going to be strong, but it also hurts to be like, I'm going to separate from that idea or that value or whatever it is.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And there was just to hit on the topic that you said, like, I'm here, I'm feeling it, but I'm also witnessing and just being a witness, right? A kind of silent witness where, there was something in me that, like, not only did I feel it, but then the wave of the collective, I felt whatever they were going through too. And things got really dark, really quick. And I knew that it wasn't mine because it's so out of character for me. But I got to a point where I was like, I'm fucking done. I'm ready to check out. I don't need to be alive anymore. Like, what am I gonna do with my dogs? Like, and that's not like me. I don't suffer from depression.
Yeah.
It has happened once in my life, and it was very odd to me when it happened, because I was like, this must be what it feels like to be depressed, because I feel like I'm in a well and I can't get out. And it's dark down here. and I don't know what happened, but I ended up getting that impetigo on my face. And what was so interesting was right after that, I met the next person I was going to be with, but it was this really interesting time energetically that I navigated, that I was like, whoa, this has never happened to me before. And so when all of that stuff started coming up, I was like, I don't want to be alone right now. Like, what's happening? It got really dark really fast. And so I had to like sit back and be like, whoa, hold on. Like, is this even mine? And it was very clear that it wasn't, because I usually, like I said, don't suffer from anything like that. I'm a eternal optimist, if you will. I always see the silver lining, the glass half full. Like, you talk to anybody that has worked with me, they'll tell you 1,000%. I'm always the one to be like, well, how about we look at it from this different perspective? And like, it's easy, just like shift this, and so, but what was interesting is that I went out on a hike. I was like, I have to get out. Like, I have to like turn off the noise. I have to get off social media. I have to like reconnect back to source and spirit. And I just did that. I just went deep with spirit. And, even when COVID started, I was like deep with spirit. I'm like, what is happening? Right. And so that's kind of what I did too. And realized that like once I grounded all that energy that was in my field and I came back to myself, I reconnected actually with my father, who passed on, and he started giving me all these songs, these older songs, so I created this playlist. But it really pulled me out of the funk, because it was this realization of like, oh, the songs that you're giving me were from a time where, when we think about it, it's like the Vietnam War was kind of going on, this uprising of love, of the whole hippie movement, of, being your own person, and really like reactivating in a different way from how your parents were, right? And so there was this whole wave in the like 60s and 70s of that. And I feel like we're going through that again now, where, like you said, it seems like this big drastic, like pearl clutching, moment in history of just like, what just happened, and I will always be a proponent for humans in general, not just women, but men, women, human, whatever you align and subscribe to, that you have sovereignty over your own body, that it doesn't matter what the government is saying. There is a way, you will find a way to do whatever needs to be done, to choose whatever it is that needs to be chosen. And so, yes, it may not be in as safe of a way, right? Because it's not readily available, but there is this, I think, mass uprising happening of people and our smaller governments and communities that are shifting towards the greater good of all, in the sense of who is around me, who is around my tribe, who are the people in my communities that I can help and that I can make a difference for. And whether that's just small, like you and your family, and then your close family and friends, right? It's like that, those circles, like you make a difference in those circles, and then that reverberates outward into other circles. But this collective feeling of, I think we're going to talk a lot about safety actually today, which is really interesting to me, because with this whole Roe v. Wade thing, I think collectively there is a big wave coming of women feeling unsafe yet again, that we have to fight more for who we are and what we want, and that we have to fight against something that maybe fight's not the word. What spirit gave me the other day was to strive. We have to keep striving for the reality that we want to live in. And because we live in a universe and in a world that has equal and opposites, the more rising that's happening, the more rise that's happening on the other end. So we're going to see that contrast even bigger in our reality. The more that all of us are striving to create something different, you're going to see that strive to keep things the same or to shift them in a direction that you're not really ascribed to.
Yeah, that's one of the, like, I think just awe-inspiring phenomena, that the yin and yang of, if ever you feel in life that is overwhelmingly leaning too dark or too negative or too harsh, that the immediate awareness becomes like, oh, that means there's actually an uprising in the love and the generosity and the community, and there's equal and opposite rising as well. But our ability to have that perspective, if we're focusing just on this, we're only going to see this, and we can only see that for long periods of time, for short periods of time, for lifetime, if that's what we only choose to focus on and feel. Correct. But as women, since we're talking about this particular impact, if as women we can feel our body first, then we can start this integration of, oh, now that I have an awareness of my most intimate environment, which is my body, which has cycles, which informs me of, when I am fertile, when I am depleted, when I am regenerating. My body tells me all of this every day. Then we can start having an awareness of the environment, and, oh, this environment isn't conducive to those cycles and regeneration in my own body. And then it just goes out like a ripple. So then we have awareness of our family and our community and our town and our state and our country. And then eventually you'll there's like a heart resonance with the like planet itself, which is where we're from. We have intimate knowledge of how that energy works. We've evolved through that energy. So I don't have a daughter, but I have young nieces. And what I think about is, my goodness, how far we've come from teaching our girls about that awareness within their own body. There's, maybe a 2-hour class in 5th or 6th grade. That's generally, and it's very much about your body with the other, instead of, no, just your body with you, with yourself as a girl into a woman. And then starting to have those conversations. There's like a physical conversation about the body and how it works and how it grows another body, or how the body could, or there was a story about a woman that had an ectopic pregnancy. So one that was never going to develop through the uterus, but that was forming in the fallopian tube. And that is an example of when intervention would be necessary for the health of the mom. Right. So there's these natural developments that happen where, maybe it's not, maybe there is even a new term that needs to be developed, not abortion, because abortion is tied so much to a developed fetus that has a viable pregnancy alongside with it. So there's like all these sort of like avenues that we start to bring awareness of. And when we have conversations about body health, then as a woman grows, she knows that I need to advocate for the health of my body, and not just the health of, like, if I want to be intimate with a partner and then possibly become pregnant and then decide on whether or not I want to have a baby, which is what a lot of the conversation is around now, right? Of like, well, then don't be having intimate relationships if you're not ready to have a baby. But then that goes back to like, well, what if there is a desire to have an intimate relationship, but we're looking at it the wrong way? We're looking at it, the only way to get that is with another person. And we're not looking at it with like, well, let's see, like, how can we build that intimacy with yourself so that you're not desiring it at such a young age, or people aren't desiring it from you. So men aren't desiring it from women in such a way that it's like, I don't know how to cope with this, so I am seeking this form of pleasure to like make the pain go away. So there's all these other energies, like it'll find a way to express itself. It's something we go back to all the time, you know, it's gonna find a way. So this energy of like needing to soothe and needing to be intimate is there. It's just currently expressing itself through these avenues that we're looking at. Like there's a quote of like, you know, the child points to the moon, the imbecile looks at the finger. That's what's happening. That's what it feels like is happening right now, where we're like, no, we're looking here and we're looking here in such a tiny pinpoint view, and we need to look at, you know, the broader energy. Like, what is it that we're desiring as a collective? And is there an opportunity as women to come and help, you know, young women understand that, as practitioners to offer services and show women how to engage with that in their own self, show partners how to engage with that in a healthy way, and not just blame, you know, that young girl or young boy grew up in a household that didn't have parents that could give them guidance, that didn't have the means to get out of an environment that wasn't healthy for them. That eventually led to these decisions of, you know, seeking that in another, and then having that cycle start all over again, because, you know, young mothers are having babies that they don't know how to care for because they didn't feel that growing up. So there's these, I feel like I kind of went in a pretzel right now, but the point being that there are things that are asking to be seen and felt, and we're seeing, you know, I am seeing them and you're feeling them. So they're out now. So it's, you know, our role in this time, in this day, being, you know, tasked with, you know, you're going to be present during this moment in time. Are you going to be alchemizing and holding steady, holding the pose? Or are you going to be going in there and rolling up your sleeves and getting into action? There's both needed, right? We can't all jump in to the dog pile. We also need others that are like, okay, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be here, and I'm gonna be holding steady, and we're gonna be keeping the pace moving forward. And at the same time, there are others who are like, I'm gonna get in there. I'm gonna get in action. I'm gonna metabolize this with everyone. I'm gonna embody the change intimately, and we're all gonna continue moving forward.
Yeah.
Nobody will be left behind. That's the thing. Nobody is getting left behind in this process that we're all experiencing.
Right. Yeah. Nobody's going to be left behind. That's so true. And what's interesting, and I didn't say this before, like I started to say this and I didn't finish my thought. I felt the need to really speak on it, and to because I did feel so much, but when I really checked in with spirit, it was like, you just need to be the bringer of light. You need to be the one that's opening that pinhole to broaden the spectrum. That's all we're asking of you to do. And the more that you can broaden people's perspective and help them see things from this different viewpoint, the better it's going to be for those that are really honed in and focused, looking under a microscope right now, right? And that look to you for some sort of support or some sort of different viewpoint, right? They're looking to you, and that's why they've toggled to you, and that's why they ascribe to be part of your tribe, is so that you can show them the different way. You can help them see things a little bit differently. And so, yeah, I do believe, all this stuff around safety and around being able to not only, because our nervous systems, I mean, depending on what we're feeding ourselves and ingesting, right? Whether that's media, caffeine, stimulants of other kinds, who you're around, like your nervous system is always working, right? And it's probably working overtime, especially if you do ingest caffeine or other sorts of stimulants. And if you are around watching the news and all this stuff, like we've been overstimulated for a very long time. We've been in fight or flight as our nervous systems for a very long time, just being in this unknown and having so much fear in the collective around first the pandemic and COVID, and then monkeypox or whatever, and then whatever the next thing is, and then now the economy, and then all this stuff now with women's bodies, and what's happening with the government. And so I really believe that everything is happening for us to see what's not working anymore, what foundations haven't been working. And like you said, our heart coherence needs to grow stronger. It needs to come back online. This is a time for us as humans. We're being forced, I think, energetically by spirit, by the universe. We're being forced to get back into our hearts, to drop out of our minds and get back into our hearts. But with the heart coherence also needs to come brain coherence. And so we need to learn how to, like you said, self-soothe and learn how to override what's happening with the nervous system, because you and I engaging, if we didn't take our time before this to not ingest or let anybody else in, right? If we had let all the noise in before, you and I would, because we're so sensitive, we would be picking up on each other's energy, and our nervous systems would be toggling to each other. And so when you're around somebody, your nervous system does whatever their nervous system does. And whoever has kind of whoever's holding the stronger energetic imprint at the time is probably going to pull the other in. And you can feel that when you get around somebody who's feeling really agitated or feeling really frustrated. You get around them and you're like, you start to feel that, you start to cohere with their energetic frequency, with what's happening in their nervous system. And so when we learn how to slow down and overwrite the mind, if you will, to help drop into the parasympathetic nervous system, first understanding and getting back into your body and understanding, is this mine? Or am I picking this up from somebody else? And then understanding, okay, what can I do to help this person override their nervous system and come back into coherence in a healthy way, to where we're bringing our parasympathetic nervous system online, activating our vagal nerve, and processing through the body, as opposed to letting it ping pong around because it's all up here in the mind, or because we've dissociated completely and aren't aware of what's happening in the body, right? And so I think this idea of feeling safe to get back in our bodies and being safe enough to actually feel all the big feelings, all the big emotions, all the stuff that's been coming up within us, and how that's activating us, how it's triggering us, what is happening within when this stuff outside of us is going on, all of these changes, all of these unknowns, because, we're creatures of comfort. And so when we're thrown out of our comfort zone, it is scary. It is uncomfortable. It does bring up a lot, but that's usually when we dissociate. And so bringing that safety back through our breath work, through doing little things like right here on the ear, if you put your finger in your ear and like push up in this little spot, you can rub outwardly and up on either side to bring your vagus nerve back online, to help you integrate and get back into your body, because our immune system is down in our guts, the majority of it, right? And the vagal nerve runs down from your stomach all the way up to your brain. And so when we're doing this, and you can do it for about 30 seconds on either side, this will help bring your vagus nerve back online. Doing things like cold plunges, sitting in cold water, taking a cold shower at the end of your shower for like 15 to 30 seconds. This stuff helps you, it like throws your body into fight or flight, but it helps you first and foremost come back to your breath and get back into your body to where everything can come online, and you can override the fight or flight method in order for you to understand how you can outwardly move from a place of consciousness as opposed to being unconscious and reactionary.
And those are such important processes to learn before you're in the middle of the moment of, you know, stress and or fear or the fight or flight. I think that's the thing right now that we're sort of getting used to, is this idea that you don't need to go to a practitioner at your worst moments. You can actually maintain that and learn these techniques before you even need them, which is even better, because then you're sharing the information and the wisdom with other people when you're feeling good. So that's the point that we want to get to collectively, is that we're sharing these wisdoms in our best moments out of like philosophy and understanding and embodiment, versus like, oh my gosh, I have no tools when I'm in the thick of things. That's not where we want people to be. And there's this really interesting technique with child psychology, because the path I came to understanding it was, I noticed that there's like repetition in storytelling, and I was very fascinated by that. Like, what is the function of this repetition of storytelling, something that happened in a bad way, like a negative experience? And so in child psychology, it's actually a form of your brain creating a connection around solving the problem. So if you have a moment, if you have a child who's experienced something harmful or traumatic, say like falling off their bike, for them that's very traumatic in the moment of like being hurt and not knowing and feeling sadness. And so as much as you can sit as the witness, as the parent or guardian or even bystander, if you've seen it and they're not with anybody, then the appropriate thing for them is to allow them to speak to what happened. And then you fill in the rest of it as the witness. So for example, if the child fell off the bike and they're in the middle of crying, you don't override that with going logical, like speaking to the left side of their brain. You actually let them stay in their lower part of the brain where it's experiencing the fear. And they say, you know, it hurts, or, oh, I'm scared, or I don't feel good, or I'm going to get hurt again. And then that will keep repeating. So like, I've just fell down, I'm hurt, oh my gosh. And then it could like build and cycle until they know the next place to go with their brain. So then the other person, the parent, could step in and say, but then I came to you, but then you were on the side of the road so you could sit down, but then we brought your bike up together, but then, or and then, not but then, and then, so that eventually the person who experienced it can form the story and experience on their own to a full completion of, I had a bike accident, and then eventually I got it repaired and met this person at the repair shop, and now I have the bike again. Or, there's ways to kind of feed it through the cycle. And we still are going through that as adults, of like repeating the trauma itself, but never allowing ourselves to get to the point, or having, practitioners or people sitting with us to say, oh, but then, that's when you left that place that wasn't good. That's when you left the relationship that's when you got a new job, or so I think those are really important practices to start encouraging each other to bring into our own like family system and friend system and personal systems. And I feel very optimistic as well, even while we're in the midst of this, because the opportunity is that we're going to start engaging in communities that we may never have visited before. There's a lot of conversation, at least in my own circle, of people who are like ready to fly the coop, fly the like safety of the nest, the warm like meal getting brought to us every day, and being like, okay, but what else is out there, and how else can we integrate? How can we become like pollen in the wind, and start going into new areas of thought and consideration where there might be a feeling of like hopelessness in some communities because it's just been one thing after another. But I feel like those like the magnifying glass has been put over those communities for a reason, as like a lighthouse. Like, this is where we need to be. This is where our attention needs to be. This is what we need to have awareness around. And then the optimistic side of me is like, oh my gosh, that's where the opportunity is to engage, to engage with schools, with kids, with moms, with maybe not institutions that are like still, evolving or hopefully evolving to a point where they're not so massive and aren't helpful in any way anymore. But I'm very, very hopeful and optimistic about what the potential is for the evolution of these experiences. And it's like such strong people that are going through these experiences and having awareness of like, if there's ever a point of why is this happening to me, that is the first indicator to me as somebody who's listening to them or seeing them, being like, because you were born with such strength, how can we answer why were you born with such strength? We don't, that's not our personal understanding to be able to have. It's the same as asking somebody like, why are you still sad? Like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what I think. I can see that there is strength there, and I can see that energy is poised for something pretty powerful. So we can see the strength and be like, man, that person just keeps getting hard knock at life. Or we can see the strength and being like, man, this is poised for some pretty incredible change. What that looks like, we don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because I picked up my book again. I haven't worked on it since 2020. I had sent it to an editor and she never got back to me and totally ghosted me. I reached out a couple of times with no response. And so I took it as like, oh, this is bad. This is not good. And her not responding to me means she saw a flaw in it and didn't want to work on it or didn't want to tell me, And I'm rereading it right now and I'm just like, this is so poignant and necessary right now. And it's not bad. It is good. It was all channeled from start to finish. There is, yes, it could be better, but at the same time, it's like, there's so much meatiness here. And it's all about the spiritual awakening process and the ascension process and what happens when we go through that. I'm like, I wish I had a book that I knew what to expect when I had my spiritual awakening and all the things I was going to go through. And, it's so interesting as I'm rereading it, because it really does come back to that. It's like our purpose or our soul's calling is beyond what we can comprehend. And all of our life experiences really help build us to whatever that is meant to be. And whether or not you get the clear indication, like, this is my purpose, when we follow our heart, when we follow the things that we're really drawn to, the things that really call to us, and we allow ourselves to move towards that, every time we do that, we're literally telling our soul, like, yes, yes. And even if you're going through a lot of hard stuff, even if you have a lot of challenges or lessons in your life, like, there's something there that's, I don't want to say hardening you, but making you stronger, making you more resilient for whatever it is, because your mess turns into your message. The thing that you're going through really helps build the character of who you're supposed to end up being in the world. And like you said, we don't know what that is all the time. You know, like, I was given my purpose and it scared the shit out of me. And I said for 4 years, like, nope, don't want it. Too much responsibility. Don't want to be a part of it. And after 4 years, I was like, what is my purpose? And I got the same thing. I was like, oh, fuck it. All right. If it's still the same, let's do it, you know? But it's like, I had to get over myself and get over my fears and, like, learn more about who I am and what I want to be in the world and how I want to show up. And I had to go through some things and experiences in life that were difficult and were hard, you know? But it really is this indication, I think, like I said earlier, I don't think we're going back in time. I am also very optimistic and very hopeful in this really waking up the collective of what's not working and how we can take our perspective and focus off the bad thing that's happened that, you know, we're all stunned about, and starting to look at solutions and where can we be a contribution and how can we contribute, and where, you know, are we being called to impact. And so, like you said, like, there are these other communities and there are these new ways, and I think a lot of new leadership is going to be coming up here pretty soon. And I did get in my channeled message this morning, in my time with my guides, that there's like a new school of thought building right now. And as this new school of thought, there are going to be more thought-provoking leaders coming into reality. And so being able to have conversations like this and to show up in a way to let people know, like, whoa, pump the brakes. Like, yes, this is a shitty situation. This is something that's happening that a lot of people are not happy about, right? And it's a slippery slope, because we know more changes are probably going to come after this that are going to help push us in one direction or the other. But how can we stop focusing on that and start focusing on, quote unquote, literally living and being the breathing embodiment of whatever this revolutionary energy is? It doesn't have to be revolutionary in the sense of war. It doesn't have to be revolutionary in the sense of an uprising. Like, we don't have to burn shit down, but, like, how can we do this in a way that you're fired up and inspired about, and how can you push that out into the world? How can you birth whatever that idea is into the world in a way that resonates for you? Because this is going to help build those new communities, build that new idea of thought, these new schools of thought. And, you know, I think that there is relevance in everything that people are feeling right now. And I want people to feel angry. I want people to feel pissed. I want people to feel sad and scared. I want people to feel the spectrum of emotions that they are feeling, because this is letting you know that there's chaos happening in the world, and chaos breeds creation. I mean, we talked about this in our first episode, right? Like, chaos is necessary for something new coming into being. And this is the chaos. This is the match strike that is creating chaos now. And where are we going to put that light? What flint are we going to light to carry forward? Are we going to carry the flint and the light of rebellion and fighting against? Mother Teresa was so beautiful in saying, like, never invite me to an anti-war rally, because she knew the importance of words and the importance of just the energy that words hold, and she said, but invite me to a peace rally and I will be there. And so I think, like, this is getting down into some nitty gritty stuff, but this is also really quantum physics. When we think about every word that we speak, I mean, our voice and our words are spell casting. So every word that we speak, we're casting a spell. And with that, each word has an energetic frequency that it holds. And if you've never read Power versus Force from David Hawkins, I think is his name. If you've never read that book, it's paradigm shifting, and it is so necessary, because what it talks about is, like, when we have these, when we're scared or we have fear, we hold fear. Fear is a low vibrational frequency. It's like you feel that and you let that fear catalyze into a flame to help you move into whatever's next. Like, don't stay there. Use that fear as a catalyst to get you to whatever the next thing is. Don't choose something out of fear, but be so scared of things staying the same that you're willing to make the change in order for it to be different, right? And so when we pull ourselves out of fear, when we look at, like, the spectrum, so fear is, like, way down here, anger is higher than fear. So if you're angry, that's great. Like, you let that fire you up even more to change. And then you get to a place of where it's like satisfaction, and that's a little bit higher. Okay, I'm satisfied with this, but, like, how can it be better? Where can I find lightness? Where can I find levity? Where can I tap back into love, which is way up here on the spectrum, right? And you and I are working on a perfume oil that is this high vibrational frequency of pure unconditional love. So when you put that on, it will literally sync you up to being in that frequency way up here. Even if it's just that feeling, energetically, you're tapping into it that's what we want to create, right? So it's good to feel all your feelings, and it's good to be in this place where we are catalyzing and letting things run through our bodies and our systems, and then not holding on to any of it, but letting it transmute, letting it integrate, and then releasing what no longer feels good to us, so we can come out on the other side changed. We can come out on the other side more integrated, more embodied. And I think too, this course that I'm offering, not only is it based on sacred sexuality, but that's, like, when we think about intimacy and pleasure, we feel that in our bodies, right? And being safe and being able to allow ourselves to get back into our body, to be embodied, to feel, to integrate and heal the things that we've been holding on to, whether that's past trauma, whether it's something that has been passed down through our mothers in the womb or our grandmothers through their womb, or it's something that has happened outside of yourself that you've taken on as your own, right, from society. And so being able to heal that, transmute that, get back into the body, feel things in a different way. And when we're feeling, we become these highly sensitive beings that understand, like you had said a bit earlier, oh, I can feel what's happening in my body and I understand, I get it, like, I can put words to this feeling, and then I can ask what it needs to show me or what it needs to integrate within me, and then how I can release the rest of it to go, because it's not serving me to hold on to it? Because when we hold on to it, we're creating what? Dis-ease in our body, we're creating blocks in our body. There's all these different things as you know, light workers in the world, and people that healers, or whatever you want to call us, where we help people to really take on the things that they've been holding on to and understand what they are, so that that way they can process them and move them out of their body to integrate whatever the lesson is, and move the rest of it out energetically, because it has just been sitting within your body and in your field, causing a little more chaos, a little bit more dissonance, or some sort of pain or dis-ease in your body, right? So yeah, I do think that this is a time when being embodied and feeling all your feelings is 1000% necessary. And through that, allowing yourself to ask more questions. Why am I feeling this? Where did it come from? Where did I first feel this feeling? How did that come up? And being able to go back and do some reprogramming with your inner child, or with that part of yourself that experienced that the first time. And this is going back to what you were talking about with the story being solidified in your head. I mean, anytime you experience something, every time you repeat that story, you're strengthening that synapse within the brain. And this could be good for a child, but it could also, I don't want to say good or bad, it could also be detrimental for keeping yourself in a loop, if you will, of pain and suffering, right? If it was something negative that happened to you, and then you trauma bond over it with people, and you think it's connection, but at the same time, you're just keeping alive this synapse in your brain of this negative thing happening to you. So like you said, it's like, it's necessary for us to be that parent, or that caretaker, or that healer, or to work with somebody that's going to help you fill in the gaps and help you see how you have transformed from that, or how you have transpired to seal the cycle and like complete the loop, so you can move on, so you're not just staying in that whirlpool of whatever that story is, right?
That's like, it's exactly that kind of approach too that makes us really good at self-sabotage, because we're so familiar with the loop. Like, we're so familiar, like we don't even need to speak the story anymore. It lives in our cells. Like, we're that familiar that we then subconsciously attract these opportunities, air quotes, that are feeding that reinforcement, so that you're never really truly growing beyond that moment. And that moment can have existed before you were even born. That moment could have happened and been experienced while you were in your mother's womb, or while your mother was in your grandmother's womb. Like, these are genetic moments in time that are still seeking to be released. And that's where I get super excited about the experimenting in human design, and this idea that you can even start to look at the mapping of your body graph and see where these energies want to be released and where they've come through certain parents. And there's a specific area now that I've been deep diving more into, which are our variables, and they're arrows on our charts that we can look at. And there's like a sequencing of energy that is going from very strategic and focused, and then the trajectory is all of us collectively moving into a more passive, receptive energy. So what that means for all the combinations of people today is that when there is a global experience happening, there's only a percentage of people who are meant to strategize this experience into a form. So a huge part of the population is meant to ledger it, essentially, is meant to passively witness and receive all the information going on, so that as things are getting built, the essence and the truth behind why things change still live on in our DNA, in our storytelling, in our support of one another. So when I look at charts, that's one that I look at to see, like, are you being influenced by the energy that you're feeling and you're wanting to strategize because that's the virtuous thing to do? Or are you actually operating within your correct energy expression? And it's okay that you're witnessing it, because you're being a ledger right now. You're being a human ledger for this period in time. And you will remember the details around why this change happened, why this moment occurred, which, if you're living in the emotional state of the moment, you can often forget those elements of, like, you know, what was the weather like that day? What was the conversation that happened before, you know, in layman terms of an experience. So it's necessary that both are coming into play within the experience of the collective person. So it's okay that when you experience this, you might not feel a call to action, because there's a variable energy in the chart that's like, you do not do that. You allow an opening for those who are called to act physically to come through. So that's where I get really excited about, you know, the idea of, if there's just enough people who are aware of how their energy operates and how the need for all of us, how there's a purpose and a need for every single individual on the earth and coming into the earth, that becomes like really mind-blowing, because then you're like, we can't pretend to be the keepers of, you know, what all this looks like when we're operating in coherence to one another. But what we do know is that we're supported by the heartbeat of the planet we live on. There's like a natural coherence that's happening within the planet that is then happening in the natural environment. So we're supported by this like background beat of where we're supposed to be operating at a frequency level. And there's this school of thought that the planet itself has already raised her frequency beyond what we're used to as, like, you know, in our physical form. So part of that's what we're feeling too, is this like this momentum of, you know, our frequency increasing, but we can have like peace knowing that the natural environment has already aligned with that frequency. They're already in coherence with that. So anything that we feel that isn't in alignment is because of that as well. So there's a background frequency that's kind of ushering us. And then there's the conscious awareness of change happening that is what we're responding to the most, but we're also feeling that when it's out of coherence. So, you know, I'm witnessing or I'm watching the story happening on the news, and it's like drawing me into a feeling of feeling sad or feeling, you know, these energetics that aren't optimal. But it's also important to recognize that those energetics are taking you out of what your natural coherence is. So anything that is feeling that way is not actually you in your expression anymore. You're actually sensing and experiencing an awareness of you out of your natural frequency and expression. So that's why it's like the temporariness of the, you know, you're feeling that way, you aren't are in that way. This is where like vocabulary gets so funny, because you're not sad. You aren't the embodiment of sadness. You feel sadness, and that has, you know, a timeline, however long it needs to be. But that's very important for people to understand everywhere, that you are feeling these things. They are moving through you. They aren't becoming you unless you allow the becoming of that feeling, which is a huge responsibility. So So you don't want to become the only like happy, like optimistic. We feel the optimism, but if we step into the role of we are only optimistic, then there is no yin yang to that experience. It's just, it becomes neutral again.
Right.
So feeling in this way, letting people express the feeling of something, the anger of something is good too, because the good girl, the good girl wound is like, don't get angry, but then there's like the other side of it is like, why aren't you angry? Why aren't you taking action? Those are vocabulary to encourage somebody to go into a conditioning aspect for approval. Mm-hmm. So those are the nuances of like the energy exchange that is really important to know yourself, because then if anybody tries to encourage us to move in a direction that's not naturally ours, then we have the capacity to say like, no, I'm actually, to speak to, no, I'm not, I'm not going to protest a war, but I'll go to, speak for peace. So you can have that that assurance in your own self, that own inner authority of like, no, I know what I'm here for. And if we're all stepping up and showing up in our way that we were, meant to be here, then things get a lot more in the flow. And we're heading there. And there will always be moments where the agitation occurs, that like breakthrough occurs for the new growth. And that's what we're in the middle of. We're in the canal, the birth canal.
We are, yeah.
The pain of the birth canal.
Yeah, it's painful.
But you don't stop
right?
the pain. You don't intervene with the pain. You
Yeah.
don't stop the pain, because we know that influences all the steps that happen, after the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy latching, the healthy heartbeat, the viability of awareness. So like all of these things need you to experience the pain, to feel the pain, but not to become the pain. Don't become the pain, because then you're going to build the new with the pain. Mm-hmm. And then you're just repeating a cycle. Mm-hmm. So that's like another big, asterisk of, yes, we're going to build the new, but have way more intention behind what that feels like in building the new, because that is going to be the background frequency for the rest of that creation. No matter if it's a new product, a new relationship, a new job, the intention of it will live with that experience.
Right. Hence why we don't choose things out of fear, right? Because then there's that underlying energy of fear behind it that's embedded, is injected in that choice. And everything that comes from that timeline after is feeding off that thread of fear that was based on why you made that choice in the first place, right? I was listening to another podcast, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and the woman, I don't even know what I was listening to, honestly, but the woman had said something like, if you create an offering from a place of scarcity and fear, it's never going to succeed. Mm-hmm. Because that's what you injected into it. And it was birthed from that place of scarcity and fear. And so when I think we do have to become hyper vigilant and hyper aware and really, really conscious of our intention of why we are choosing the things that we're choosing, why we are creating the things that we're creating, and that why we're wanting the things that we're wanting. Is it for safety and security? Is it for a sense of love? Is it for a deeper sense of purpose? Like, is it for service to something greater than ourselves? Like, whatever it is, when you know what's behind it, the why, then you can see kind of the trajectory of where it's going to take you. You can see, oh, if my why isn't intentional and it's coming from this place of scarcity or fear or lack or, whatever, that's lower vibrationally, and I'm pushing that forth into the world, like, we're master manifestors right now. We're creating at a very rapid rate. I mean, like, things are happening so much quicker, and it's because, like you said, the Earth's frequency has already upgraded. And so it's like timelines are collapsing in on each other, and it feels like time is speeding up.
Mhm.
It feels like things are happening so much faster because they are, and because the frequency is faster on the planet. And so we are feeling that. And there is, this sense of urgency, but then there's also this sense of like, oh, wait, but I don't want to push it into being. Like, is this coming from my ego, or is this coming from this inspired action place of like, go, it's time to go, do it, like push it out now. And so like I think the more that we get embodied, the more that we are allowing ourselves to feel things within the body, no matter what it is, positive or negative, without holding on to it or taking ownership of it, right? The more that we do that, the more sensitive we become to understanding what is in coherence for us and our truth and our body, and what is not in coherence with us. Because when we're really focused on that, sorry, my dog has a little cough. But when we are focused on that, we become really deciphering of our own truth, of what is true for us. And when we can kind of turn off the story of our beliefs and the things that have happened in our life, and the experiences that we've had, or kind of like how we talked about in the beginning, which people aren't going to get to hear now because I hadn't started the recording, but of your birthday stuff, and like having this thing in the background, right, of like, oh, this is the way it was, but like being able to turn all that off and really get into the present moment of it, of like, oh, that's really not how it was. Okay, that's a really hard pill to swallow. This is a hard truth, but at the same time, I'm gaining this awareness now around this is the truth. And I think more and more the veils of perception are being dropped, and we are getting to see more and more truth on every level. And a lot of it is hard to swallow. A lot of it is uncomfortable, because it's like, I've been living in a fantasy this whole time, or I've been living in quote unquote the matrix of what I've been told, and I'm seeing the truth now, and it's pretty ugly. I watched the Matrix not too long ago, and it's like the real world wasn't beautiful. It was ugly. It was kind of underground, and and they were all fighting, right? They were all striving to wake people up. And so it's interesting that I don't know that we have to go to this apocalyptic place, but hopefully we don't. But I do think that, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, no matter how many quote unquote bad things are happening on the planet, I don't see them as good or bad. I see them as just is. And the fact that it's helping to wake us up as a human race to understand that there's more out there than what we've been told. There's more out there than what we've been fed and given or shown. And we have to discover that for ourselves. We have to start questioning more. We have to start feeling more. We have to start embodying more to understand what is true for our individual being, without the noise of our ego and everything that has happened in our experience beforehand. which is probably the most difficult part, right? To turn off the ego and to really tune into the present, to turn off to the experiences and turn on to what's happening right now. What are you actually being shown? What are you actually feeling? What is the actual truth of that? And a lot of times it's not what we've romanticized. It's not the thing that we thought.
Mhm. It's the approach too could even be that there's like a couple different ways. So if there's a necessity for like quickness, you can turn it off and be like, okay, we're gonna regroup and revisit that at a better time. Or there's an approach of, okay, what is that thing trying to say? So for example, I got a text from a friend recently and she was like, I just want to run. Like the situation just makes me want to run. And I know that's not good. I was like, what if you have like inner you just wants to run right now? Why are you, what is holding her back? Why are you holding her back? Why can't she run? What if that is where she goes, like to figure stuff out? And then I say, it's making me think of a story that my sister shared about a student at one of her schools. She's a principal. And she, same thing. She's like, we have a runner. He just like gets in this state and he runs out into the neighborhood. And I was listening to her tell a story, and the natural approach is like, like we have to stop the runners. Like it's not safe out there. Like they're leaving the campus. We have to call the police. And I'm listening to her story, and I was imagining this boy and, getting into headspace of like, what do you feel like when you want to run? It's like there's a quickness, there's something your physical form is saying, let's get out of here, like, so that my mind can engage. So then the more we talked about it, it was like she was really struggling with this, like, does he become part of the system? Is he just like a runner and then the cops come and he's like a bad person because of this instinct? So then the more we talked, the more it became like, well, what if you gave him somewhere to run to? Not just him, but any child. What if there was a place for him to run to at the school though? And she was like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, like maybe there's like a spot he can go to. Like he has permission to run to that spot. But what I didn't anticipate is my sister turned it into a calm room at the school. So she talked to the janitor and they identified a room at the school that was just like a catch-all kind of space. She set up a GoFundMe and was like, hey, I want to build a space where they don't have to go and like their mind could go and be at ease. They can physically go to a different space where their mind could be at ease. So she added, it was like beanbag chairs and sensory toys and sensory, tables, that kind of thing. And built out this whole room that became the calm room so that he and potentially future children like him, who, mind you, just returned from being out of school for, a year and a half, 2 years from COVID. So on a heightened alert, just like a lot of adults are feeling.
Where it's probably really sensitive too.
Yeah. And, we're going to have more children like that are these hypersensitive, hyper aware. And the solution was amazing to be like, yes, give them somewhere to run to, because then you are telling them it's okay to feel that way. And that's all we're ever trying to feel and be acknowledged by from another being is like, I feel this way, and guess what? That's okay. Yeah. And then guess what? And you're still loved and you're still cared about. And starting that at such a young age is a huge deal. And it's part of what gives me hope for how we can transition the experiences of now into these experiences of, like you mentioned, the fortitude of make these perceptively weak experiences into moments of strength of like, I know how to cope with this. When he becomes older, when people become older, they can think of, you know what, when I felt the need to run, I ran to a safe space. I didn't run into the arms of an abuser. I didn't run away from my home. I didn't run towards drugs and alcohol. I ran to somewhere that made me feel it was okay to be this way. And that made me realize I was still lovable.
Yes, I think that's so important. And, you know, it's so interesting, that feeling of safety, of feeling acknowledged and okay to be the way that you're feeling. You know, when you talked about this kid being a runner, when I think about running, um, there's this sense of freedom that happens too, to dissociate from what's happening and giving yourself the freedom to move, to be away from whatever that overwhelm is. And I know as a runner, I love to run because it makes me feel that certain way. It helps to clear my mind, you know, and it's so amazing. I mean, just your sister being a, you know, I'm glad that she did have that conversation with you and it came to that solution, even though it was something that neither one of you had like really acknowledged or thought it could ever go to, you know, but it was such a beautiful solution that came out of that conversation, based on how do we nurture this innate thing within somebody, due to whether it's experiences that he's had before and he feels this need to run, or whether it's something that is just innate within him, you know. And you know, it's interesting to deal with people who have that kind of dissociative quality, to want to run or ghost or not engage when they're feeling overwhelmed. But it's like, how do we work within our relationships to understand that, okay, that's not quite an okay way of doing things in an adult relationship. Like, how do we navigate this in a more healthy way, but still give you space and not make you wrong for that, you know, still give you space to be who you need to be. And like, can you just say, I need space, I can't engage right now. Like, can you just give that little bit of information and not leave somebody hanging, you know? Even that, I think, is a more healthy aspect, because you're telling your truth. And if somebody can see that truth and acknowledge that that's your truth in that moment, can hopefully still love you for whatever that is that you're going through, and not make you wrong for it, you know, and not have it be the be all end all of whatever that relationship is, you know, which is something really hard to navigate in this day and age, being a culture and a society where everything's kind of online. Dating's online, you know, and oh, I'm not feeling you anymore, so I'm just not going to engage with you at all, you know. And it's just like, oh, okay, what just happened, you know, which gives people complexes and like can hurt them and give all sorts of other, you know, like emotional baggage. But you know, at the same time, it's like, how do we navigate all of these changes? And like you said, how do we learn how to self-soothe and really come back to ourselves, as opposed to needing to run to someone or something for that support or for that help? You know, how do we make it safe within ourselves and within our life to really just be who we're going to be, and acknowledge that it's okay, even if people tell us it's not okay, right? I think it's amazing that I do think more and more kids and more schools need places like that and need people like that. And, you know, and I think we're getting to that place, but I think we're the bringers of it. We're the ones that are creating this new reality. You know, we're the ones that are looking for solutions. We're the ones that are digging a little deeper, learning how our genetic makeup works, how our trauma helps to build who we are, you know, how our experiences and whatnot have a place. And, you know, you doing human design and me doing energy work, it's like, oh, is this yours? Did it come from your generational line? Like, oh, this could not even actually be yours. This could have come from a past life, you know, that you're just still carrying with you. And like, how do we transmute that? Where did that come from? You know, understanding, like, going back to where we started with this conversation, Eve, and that yearning for knowledge and understanding more about who we are and why we're here and what we're here for, and not putting all the weight behind it of the necessity of it, but knowing that it's there, knowing that we can dig deeper should we want to dig deeper, knowing that our reality doesn't have to stay our reality. We have the choice to change it. We have the choice to find a different solution, to tap in somewhere else, to focus on a broader perspective or see things from a different angle. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of times chaos happening and something throwing you off of whatever level you've been at and whatever site you've had, you know, like I think of like looking in those things that are like built in, right? And at like an overlook point, right? And you look at it, you're like, oh my God, like look at all the stuff you can see. But from your viewpoint without that, it's like a magnifying glass, right? But from your viewpoint without that, everything looks small and broad and you're just like, whatever. But then you get in there and you're like, oh my God, wow, you can see everything. And like, that's kind of where we're at. It's like, you have these like magical goggles you can put on, but sometimes the universe has to like knock you off of your perch of where you're at, so you can start to see things from, and give you, you know, put these spectacles up so you can see things from this different perspective and see things more clearly, and like zoomed in ultimately, like, but you have this trajectory where you can move all around at that point, you know, like your spectrum just broadened increasingly. So yeah.
And if you're a generator, think, like, respond and consider with intention what you're about to get into. So if you do lock into something, you're like, I want to engage with that, that's an energetic exchange too. Like you're signing off on something that could be long term. So it's okay to kind of like take that perspective and move it around and engage with intention. And with projectors too, success is the signature. So consider with intention what you want to be successful in. Do you want to launch a low self-worth campaign and, you know, in the energy of what is the word, scarcity? Then you will have success, but it will be success in scarcity.
Right.
So, you know, the intentionality of it is so important and so worthwhile to start engaging in if you're ready to move a little bit beyond what we've been fed on a day-to-day basis through the different modalities and media. There's a lot to be experienced that is so juicy and ripe and ready, and like be Eve and just go like pluck that fruit, which even just saying it feels like, oh, like, am I doing a bad thing? No, like it is there's a new energy of like support and like prep. It feels like that it's something has been prepared for you to be a part of and engage with in a meaningful way. And it's okay to let go of the fear. And these like practices of yoga and kundalini and breath work and cold plunge and anything that's going to engage your fascia and stretch it and help to release. It's not something that, you know, when we think of like something that lives deeply in our cells, it also moves through our fascia, which is like that like white part of the meat, if you're a meat eater. So it's like
the thin layer on the outside of the muscle.
Yeah, it's like, that's the part that's actually moving the muscle around. That's the contraction and expansion. So the idea is that if you stretch that out, that's actually helping to promote the release of this energy that's pretty surface level, So as much as the terminology is like something deep rooted, it's kind of also not. It's kind of also always ready to come out. So yeah, there's a lot of hopefulness in taking the next step of, what if I want to usher in this like more positive reality versus commending this reality or existence that doesn't feel good in my body or our body.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up fascia too, because I've been doing like self massage on my legs, on my feet, on my, my stomach. And I had a fall. I fell off a 20-foot wall climbing, and like kind of starfish down, like, oh, and landed on my left ankle and like sprained it really bad. And the doctor was like, you would have been better off breaking your ankle. Like, this is a class 3 sprain. Like, it's going to take a long time to heal. It took about a year to heal. But I think that shock from from that fall in my system, I've always kind of held more energy on my left side. And I've always had a little bit of pain on my left side, right? And so some of it was emotional pain, but I think the stuff that I'm feeling now is really deep rooted in that shock that my body went through in that fall. And so I've been doing all this stuff to really work the fascia and release the fascia. And the more that I do that, the better I feel. But it's interesting because as I'm doing that, throughout the days, more and more stuff is coming into my consciousness about like little things that had happened in my life. Like, I remember some sort of random memory that I haven't thought about since that thing happened, right? So things are getting released, I think, in a different way. And I watched this whole thing with Ashley Black and her fascia blasters, and how you can heal yourself. But I just use my gemstone wand and tools, and it works. It's so helpful to do things like moving your chi, moving, the energy in the body by getting massages, doing tai chi, getting acupressure, using an acupressure mat, having acupuncture, doing tapping, like kundalini, breath work with retention holds, all the pranayama stuff. I mean, all of this in culmination together, I really do believe, our bodies are magnificent, highly divinely intelligent things. And we can not only, we have neuroplasticity, like rewire our brains, but our body, our cells are regenerating all the time. And what we're telling ourselves, going back to words hold power, right? What we're telling ourselves through our thoughts, through our beliefs, through the things that we're saying out loud. If you look in the mirror and you're always like, oh, I hate my stomach. Well, guess what? Your stomach's going to hate you. You're probably going to have digestive issues. You're probably always going to look a little overweight. You're probably never going to have that tummy that you want because you're literally feeding it hate every day, And so when we're doing these things in culmination, it's like the body just starts to naturally respond to the healing that you're bringing it, to the love that you're bringing it, to moving the chi, to ironing out the fascia, to, releasing the things that are held within our fascia and within our, within our muscles, within our joints. We hold so much trauma and stress in our hips. And it's amazing when people start doing yoga, they have these really big emotional releases because they've had stuff stored in their hips for so long, and all of a sudden it's opening up, So I do think that there is so much available right now and so much knowledge that has been brought into the world. And I think more and more of us are learning, more and more of us practitioners are learning different ways of how to do things. I know for you, you do breath work and Kundalini and human design and nutrition. I'm like, it can go and acupuncture. Yeah.
Yeah. I would encourage, people to play with the different modalities and see what you respond to, because the body, it won't be what your mind thinks is the right thing. It'll be what your body feels is the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I highly recommend if, this talk or our first episode has been influential or helpful at all, to get a human design reading with Allison. And for myself, I am offering that sacred sexuality course, Sex, Magic, and Money. And also, I think I'm going to put out it'll probably be an online course around safety and like having different types of meditations to reprogram the brain, almost like subliminally, right? Being able to tell your body, when you're telling your body that you're safe, what your body feels as you really hold that vibrational frequency is that you feel the sympathetic nervous system relax, and you feel everything come back into your body. You feel that safety, and it's so beautiful. So this is something I've been toying with over the last few days, and I'm glad that we're talking about it. And it's a new moon today. And so this is like such a beautiful time to really set intentions and to bring and birth something new, because we have come out of the summer solstice, right? And we're in a Cancer new moon, so we're feeling a lot, we're feeling a lot of emotions, and this is a perfect time to set the intention of what you're wanting to create and where you're wanting to create from, and then beginning to birth that into reality, whatever shape or form that looks like. But like Allison said, feeling it in your body first and knowing what feels good, because your mind, it doesn't make sense to your mind. It really doesn't. It's not what you would ever think usually.
Yeah.
In all ways, shapes, and forms.
Exactly.
I was listening to something the other day too, and this woman said, your body never lies. Your body will always tell you yes or no. Your body never lies. And it's so funny because I'm going to share probably a little TMI and maybe more than I want to share. But I went on a date with a guy and he tried to kiss me, and it was nice, but it was not, there wasn't fireworks. There wasn't like, I was just like, that was nice. I wasn't really ready for the kiss, so it was like, oh, this is happening. But it was really interesting because afterwards, my whole body, like I kind of curled up. My stomach started hurting. I was like, I think I need to go. And I left and I came home and I was really cold. I ended up like falling asleep on the couch right away, waking up at like midnight and going to sleep. And then having this whole like reactive thing in my body. I was like, did I have one too many margaritas? Like that came on out of nowhere. And I was like, or was it just my body rejecting this person? Like my body said no. And it was so funny, like listening to that and this woman saying, your body never lies. And I was like, oh, yep, you're right. No, that was my body saying, absolutely not. No, this is not going anywhere. So, this is what this whole podcast is about, right? Listening to your inner authority, getting in your body, understanding who you are, and learning what these desires are based on what happens in your body. Do you want to share anything else, Allison?
The last part that made me think of it is like your body is like your best friend, and then it's your super honest friend, and then it's your ride or die friend. So No matter how many times you ignore it, it's still going to show up for you. No matter how many times you've, stressed it to the max, it's still going to keep going. But the most sustainable relationship we can have is the symbiotic, that when we know it's depleting, we replenish, and just keeping that in mind as we operate this incredible system that we have to live with, and not to take advantage and wait till, we're in our 40s and decide that it's worthy of, the care that we teach our children, and then we learn early on that it's worthy of the care. So
yes. And I think our body will always talk to us, right? It's always telling us yes or no. And so really listen when you're having pains in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Ask what those pains are. Is there something you're needing to dig deeper into? Is it emotional? Is there something you're needing to heal? Your body will never lie. And so if it's telling you something, if you're in pain, there's something there to dig into.
Mm-hmm. Yes, allow
you
the pain. Yeah, allow the pain to be shared. That's like in our culture, we just want the pain to go away. We want to pop aspirin, Advil, Tylenol, Midol, and we want it to just be quiet. And that's a disservice to the intellect of your body. And it's frankly showing us how we were cared for when we were in pain. So was it okay to cry? Was it okay to say we were in pain? Oftentimes, if it wasn't, if we needed to quiet because it wasn't the proper place or time to express it, then that's how we treat our bodies when we're older, when we're grown. We will quiet the pain because it's just not the right time or the right message. So don't quiet the pain, let it be shared, and then listen to where, like you said, it's coming from. There's a really great book called The Body Speaks, and it goes through the different areas of the body and what emotionally or spiritually, if you're interested in learning more about that, what it could be representing. For example, two areas for women often is like lower back, and then headaches. And so lower back is often where grief is stored. So if you are someone that is always experiencing lower back pain, especially like during menstruation and through menopause and beyond, this holding the grief in that area, and like oftentimes like the tears that haven't been shed. So if you store it for too long, then it moves up to the lungs, and that's where we start to experience ailments like pneumonia or bronchial, where the lungs just are overwhelmed with grief. So it's a really beautiful read if you're interested in that. And
the lungs are like the tree of life when you think about it, like up the central axis, and then how they the way everything spreads out. It's like the tree of life. And our breath, when we think about our breath being life, if you're having lung problems and even COVID attacking the lungs, it's like this attack on your life force energy, right? There's something bigger here, really, in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, definitely listening to your body, especially if it's like that. And then what do headaches represent?
Oh gosh, so
headaches, that one.
Headaches is interesting because it's funny when I see people injure their heads, it's like it's often this like the override, the intuition is being override, or what you are aware of or what you know isn't okay to be shared. So if the energy is trying to come out, but you're trying to contain it, then that's where the pressure of the headaches can come in. or if you're seeing, like what you see, it's often like the incoherence again. So often these things come back to, well, it's not in alignment. So what you're seeing and what you're telling yourself you see is not in alignment. So the headache will ensue. What you're hearing or thinking is not in alignment with what you're seeing or experiencing. So headache will ensue. So it's really great to pause in those moments and be honest with yourself too, because if you're noticing something, seeing something, thinking about something, but the messaging isn't in alignment, it's like, well, I know this person is being rude to me. I hear the words of rudeness, but I'm gonna blame it on something else. So then there's this like, instead of like, hey, boundaries. You know, you spoke with me, you spoke to me in a firm tone. It felt like you were meaning this. Is that the case? Is not the case. So you like let the energy come through. It wants to come through somehow.
Yeah. And it will, your body will speak to you, your mind, like if you sit with it long enough and you just listen and leave space, like you ask the question, what are you trying to tell me? What is the root of this, or what do I needing to know from this? When we just leave space, you don't have to get the answer right then and there, but when you leave space, it will come. Sometimes when you're least expecting it. It may be like right when you're waking up in the morning, you know, all of a sudden you have this like download of information of like, oh, this is what it's about, because you're super receptive and open at that first moment of when you wake up, you know? So just, it might happen in the shower when you're like, you know, washing your hair, and like when your mind isn't working right in overdrive. So just leave space, and your body, your higher intelligence of your higher self, your soul will speak to you.
And this is like, this is not to be in the same bucket as like bypassing. So it's really important to know that the organ of your brain is the priority support for the rest of the system. So if you are feeling depleted in other areas as well, it's because those resources are going to your brain first. So if you can circumvent the disease or the ailment by addressing what's happening in your brain, we spend a lot of brain energy on like when we're thinking, like over obsessing and reading and stimulating beyond what our output is for our brain. That causes burnout in the body, but really we start to feel it at the lower part of our brain. So there's actually a part in our lower brain where all of that is like the connection, the nerve system is releasing first. So you want to keep replenishing what you're taking from the brain. And those are really important aspects to think about. Like if you're on the computer all day and you're getting headaches, those are different. That's like a strain on your optical nerve, on your brain stem that you need to address, because you don't want to start neglecting those areas either. So make sure you take minerals, you're eating correctly, you are feeding your brain processes sweets, glucose more quickly. So it is going to crave sweets if it is depleting, because that's the easiest thing to break down and get to your body for nutrients, your brain for nutrients. So if you're craving sweets, that should be an indicator of like, I'm using a lot more, I'm depleting a lot more than I'm giving it. So rather than depleting, and then having coffee where you're dehydrating yourself, and then you're wondering why you have a headache and pops an Advil later, don't do that anymore.
That's an override.
Let's honor our body a little bit more deeply and with a little bit more intention, and bring into these practices of like, ooh, okay, I hear you. I need to take a break. I need to have some fruit. I need something that is still easily broken down, that can feed
healthy fats like oils, avocados, nuts, like walnuts. All that stuff is going to be really good brain food.
Yes. So the acute little appetizer can be something sweet, and then it starts engaging, and it can break down the fatty proteins and get that to the brain to start rebuilding those cells. So it's really a like a beautiful system. It's an art form in many ways that takes care. And your system can definitely be equated to a top of the line, Porsche that many people take care of better than their own bodies. So we don't want to perpetuate that. Like the body is a material form too. So, you can treat it, you can dress it up and get it massaged and feed it well and spoil it in all those good ways, and not ignore it till it's hurting and not capable of supporting you anymore. The vitality is so low, it's like intervention is needed. We don't want that. So there's plenty of opportunity to live in a way that keeps all of that bad stuff at bay. So you live in a regenerative form, not a depleted form.
Yes. And I just want to speak on one last thing. I, being highly sensitive and receiving a lot from spirit, and I know all the people that I work with that do receive a lot from spirit too, we receive at the back of our brain. We receive at this like occipital ridge here. And so sometimes there may be a lot of pain because we're receiving so much all at once that it's almost like I've learned that my eyes will start wanting to close, and it's like my body telling me like, you need to take a rest. We're going to give you a big download. So you just need to lay back and chill out for a little bit. And so usually when that happens, if you're a highly sensitive person and you receive a lot from spirit and it happens in that, you tend to get that like headache in the lower part of the, head or upper part of the spine, neck area. Like if it's just usually one side, that's sometimes a need for rest to receive that download of information. So your body, I wasn't talking to you, spirit. I mean, Spirit. Always talking to you, spirit, not talking to you, spirit. My watch does that all the time. But what's so interesting is that like when you just let your body rest and take that moment, even if it's just coming off the computer and laying your head down for a little bit, and normally it's about 20 minutes and you're good to go after that. But really just start listening to your body. And like Allison said, we've got to take care of ourselves. Like it's the Porsche that we just spent, I don't know, 80 grand on. I don't know how much they cost. I don't know how much they cost, but yes, I do think that we can take better care of our bodies. And I do highly believe when we are really in tune with ourselves and our body will tell us what it wants and what it needs. And you can begin intuitive eating, and you can always check in as well to say like, oh, I'm really craving chips. Like, does my body need salt? Am I needing more sodium right now because I'm feeling depleted in, electrolytes and needing more of that? Or is it an emotional reaction to wanting some sort of comfort food, right? Like, or just like something that you're just like, oh, I'm feeling nervous, I want a snack, so really tuning in. But your body will always, when we're intuitive eating like that, like, and being in cycles, when we're in tune with our body and in tune with our cycles, it just kind of naturally starts to happen. Like now that it's gotten warmer out, all I want is fruit and cold stuff. Like I don't want to cook. I don't want to eat hot food. And I eat a lot less in the summer, which is really interesting. I don't like need as much sustenance. It's like smaller throughout the day, colder things, but it's because it's so hot out, right? And I don't know if you saw what I was drinking. I have like mint and rose petal water. So, it's like things like that like your body starts to crave certain things to cool it down. And in the winter, you want more of the like cinnamon and nutmeg and spices and the warmer things, to warm your body up from the inside. So listen to your body, friends, listen to your body.
Please.
Do you mind if I plug the course?
No, not at all.
Okay, so I am enrolling now for Sex, Magic, and Money. And this is a course all about getting embodied through sacred sexuality. This is not about going outside of yourself for, seeking comfort. This is really about healing and calling all parts of yourself back into your body so you feel safe, so you feel secure, so you can self-soothe and you can bring about the life that you have always dreamed of. You can be in alignment with the magic and the money and everything else that you're calling into your life. And it's about these embodiment practices. And then we will be healing the core wounds, the witch wound and core wounds that we've carried from our generational lineage. And I do think, I didn't think about this before, but since you brought it up, I think we really need to rewrite the Eve wound here. That this is so big. You bringing that up at the beginning is so big. And I think it's such a huge part of us reclaiming our sovereignty as women on the planet and women in general. I mean, it hasn't been safe to be a woman for a very long time. And thinking about it starting from even that story in the Bible, the beginning of man and woman. My God, this has been such a beautiful talk. So if you're interested in that, the link to my website will be below. And please also book a reading with Allison, get a human design reading. You will not be sorry. You will learn so much about yourself. And I just cannot wait for more and more people to have this knowledge and to understand themselves in these deeper, more beautiful ways, so we can continue to keep creating this new earth in a way that is intentional and with so much beautiful consciousness and heart coherence.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
It has. I love our talks and I can't wait. I don't know what we're going to talk about next time, but this one was so good, and just diving into the sacred sexuality in women and I mean, it's all poignant and so perfect timing wise with Roe v. Wade and all that good stuff. So we'll see you guys on the next one, and thank you for listening. And Allison, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye guys. Love you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Your Inner Authority, the Sacred Art of Living in Your Authentic Truth with Allison and myself. If you like this, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And please, as an energetic exchange, all that we ask is for you to share this with someone you love that you think will vibe with it as well. We are looking to grow organically and to share all of our insight and knowledge with whomever is ready to hear it. We love you guys, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you all in the next episode.